So every year, my dad and I do our best to get to at least one Chiefs game a year in Kansas City. It doesn't really matter the opponent. We're typically looking for a time of year that isn't totally freezing cold or overly rainy, but it's Kansas City. It's impossible to predict that. But over the last few years, at least the last 5 years or so, um, as is common with any parent, you're going to encounter aging and the difficulties of aging. And with my father, it's been first, he had heart issues where he had to have a pacemaker installed, which is a heavy toll on the body to go through that with your heart, which means that you are a little less able to move quickly or easily. And then right after he had that pacemaker installed, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and had to have that treated, which again takes a toll on the body, even if it's localized chemotherapy, not regional chemotherapy, just targeted radiation. It wreaked havoc on his bones and his hips, and that he's not able to walk. He's already had pain in his back for decades, as long as I can remember, really. And we start to run into something that I myself, even in my early 50s, have not had to think about, which is accommodating for people who aren't exactly able to, like myself, who don't have the same abilities that I do, that people have limitations that differ than mine. Because all of us have limitations, but they all differ. And I've just never had to encounter the world through which the accommodations aren't as obvious or as easy or as simple. For instance, just picking him up at the airport is something where I now have to find a wheelchair, which is not a big deal. Meet him as close to his terminal as possible to wheel him to get his baggage. Not hard. You have elevators and escalators. Escalator you can't really use with an elevator, but we can use elevators. And then to find a rental car, we have to get a bus, be able to get onto that bus. Can't typically use a wheelchair to get on the bus, so he has to walk on, which is hard and difficult. So I have to help him there, and then he has to get off. And then we have to find either another wheelchair or walk very slowly through the rental car area, which could take a while. Find an elevator, wait for that elevator, go up that elevator, and then walk some more to a rental car place. Again, if there isn't a wheelchair readily available in that facility, since he doesn't have one, and bring one with him. He doesn't use a walker because, he's a man who doesn't want to use a walker at this point, but that might be an issue that has to come up. And then once we get to the bus to get to the rental car place, then walking to the car in that rental car place, or having them bring it up, which thankfully they did, making sure that car is accessible to his limitations, meaning can't be a sedan, can't be a car that's low, has to be a car that's high up so that he can get into, because getting up and down is really hard with his hips and his legs and his knees and his back. Let alone all the other things that go around with that. Things that we had typically done with ease and joy and simplicity has gotten more complicated, more timely, more difficult. Just going to a restaurant. It's easy to go to one and to drive up and drop him off, but it takes him time to walk there and to be seated. Thankfully, the place that we went to had a booth that was a little bit easier for him to get into. Chairs are a little more difficult. Just all little things that we take for granted because we think of the world as accommodating to our generalities, our norms. And that's not the way things work. That a lot of things, when they have accommodation, it doesn't harm me at all to have accommodations, such as restaurants giving more width between tables for people in wheelchairs or who have walkers. Having tables that aren't as close together so people can get between them easily, who have mobility issues, who have stability issues. That doesn't hurt me at all with someone who doesn't have that issue. I don't even notice it because the world is already fine for me. But when I start to notice it is when the world isn't as accommodating. Even getting to the game, you have to park, and then you have to get to the stadium. We parked way out by Royal Stadium, which is not close to the football stadium at all. Arrowhead, the parking lot is just a complete and total chaos of just people. It's amazing, tailgating and cooking and playing cornhole and throwing footballs around. It feels like a college atmosphere, quite honestly. But for someone with mobility issues, it's terrifying. It is a vast sea of complications of how am I going to get just out of this parking lot into a road to walk for what feels like miles and miles and miles. Uh, we called about getting accessibility, which they would bring a cart, but they have to find you. And we weren't able to get a hold of people. And there was a lot of confusion about how they would find us and get to us. So we walked there, and it took a good hour to walk from our car to the stadium. And it hurt my dad tremendously just to do that. And then when we got close enough, we were able to find and flag down some staff that were helpful. They had a wheelchair with a little flag, and they took us through the elevator, which again, not enough elevators. It was a good 20-minute, 30-minute wait just to get to the elevator that took us up to our seats. And then from there to our seats, obviously the wheelchair can't go down those steps. So my dad had to stand up and navigate down very steep steps in a stadium to our seat. And then there's, he has to go to the bathroom. He needs food. So obviously I get all that for him. I'm not making him get up and walk and get foods and drinks and all that. But if he had to go to the bathroom, he had a plan a long time ahead to get out of his seat, to walk past people, and then up those steps, which again hurt his hips, hurt his back, to a bathroom, to stand in line and to go. Very difficult. Um, the world, when it is not thinking about others who aren't exactly like themselves, is a landmine of difficulty. And when you even just take the time to consider it, having helpers, thinking about ramps and elevators and wide lanes and chairs that are easy to get to, aisles that are wide enough for people to walk easily, so that when people are walking by you as you're sitting in your seat, standing up over and over again to let people get by is hard and hurtful. If they were just a little bit wider, then there wouldn't be this need to, keep standing up. Things like that. It doesn't harm anyone who isn't aware of it because, oh boy, I have a wider aisle. Oh, the tables aren't as close. It doesn't harm you at all, but it does help people who have limitations who you aren't even aware of. That's what I think those of us that are fighting for the rights of people whom we might not consider worthy of it, or a lot of people are against it because they think that it's in some way detracting from them. That's all we're asking for, is an accommodation that in no way, shape, or form harms someone else. It isn't subtractive in some way. Accommodating people, giving them just simple enough freedoms to enjoy life, does not detract from someone else's enjoyment of life. It's an additive process. And I think many of us on the left, at least from my perspective, what I'm arguing for when trying to think of just allowing people to exist, even though, it's not telling someone to just merely like accept. I don't really care if you accept. That's not the problem. It's accommodating. That's it. Just allow someone to at least have a simple enough freedom to be able to exist. That's it. Because it in no way, shape, or form harms you. It doesn't impact you to allow them the simple ability to get around, to exist with who they are. And there's going to come a time when all of us are going to encounter needing something in life that accommodates us. And for the most part, most of us, it's already accommodated to us. The common denominator, the generality, if you will, accommodates us. But there will come a time where you're going to want a little bit more accommodation. And I think we need to be aware of a world that exists that isn't just our mirror reflection, that can accommodate people who aren't exactly like ourselves, who don't believe like us or love like us or appear like us or move like us or present like us. It doesn't mean that it is subtracting from who we are. It's adding to the richness of life, giving people the ability to enjoy the things that we take for granted. So just think about that if you're someone who has never considered accommodating and how you engage with life. Think about how that life might be challenging for people who aren't exactly like you. Just food for thought. Thank you for watching this and listening. I'm sorry that I rambled on, but I love you. Have a great day.